America is an increasingly crowded country with 325 million people concentrating more and more into a few major cities. Despite that, or maybe because of it, America is also becoming a lonelier country. People have fewer friends, fewer confidants, and feel less connected to their communities. And that's having a big effect on the nation. Vivek Murthy is a former Surgeon General of the United States, and Tucker recently spoke to him.
I'm not making an argument against psychiatric medication, obviously, but it's hard not to notice that the incidence of Americans, the number of Americans on psychiatric medication is rising, but so is the suicide rate. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that antidepressants have a role. They have a place when it comes to addressing depression, and there are a lot of folks who have benefited from them. But there's a big but here, which is that I think that we have been, over time, probably over-prescribing these medicines and not looking carefully for alternatives and for other ways to address people's depression, not really looking deeply at the causes of what's driving their depression.
Well, that's it right there. So, I mean, you would think when the suicide rate spikes, and it has measurably, that we would have a national conversation about why. What do you think the cause is?
Well, I don't think there's one single cause, but I think there's one particular cause that's contributing to depression that I don't think we talk about enough, and that is social disconnection, that is loneliness. And when I began my tenure as Surgeon General, if you had told me that I would be thinking about and talking about loneliness as much as I have, I would have told you you're absolutely wrong. But I was really educated by people all across America who I met during my travels while in office. And what I came to see through their stories and examples was that many of them were struggling with isolation and loneliness. They didn't always say that at the beginning of the conversation, but it became very clear that that was a part of their experience and their story, that it was contributing, in fact, to anxiety and to depression in their lives. When I delved more deeply into the science around loneliness, what became very clear is that loneliness is not just a bad feeling that we may have from time to time, but when it's experienced for long periods of time, it can increase our risk for heart disease, for dementia, for anxiety and depression, and it's associated with a shortening of our lifespan. So it turns out that people who are struggling with chronic loneliness not only live shorter lives, but the mortality impact is as great as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Well, sure, and there's no pleasure in it, of course. I mean, it's a living hell being lonely. So what were you prescribed to someone who's lonely? How do you fix that?
Well, the first thing that's important to address with someone who's struggling with loneliness is getting them to talk about it, to recognize that because you are lonely does not mean that you are broken or somehow fundamentally flawed.
Do you suspect that technology is making us lonelier?
I think that technology is a tool that can be used to both address loneliness but can also increase loneliness. What makes a difference is how you use technology. And I think the way that we're using technology right now, I worry, is actually increasing our loneliness. And it's doing so in a couple of ways. One, when you look at social media and you look at the data that's increasingly coming out on social media usage and its impact on the mental health of people, you see that increased social media usage is often associated with increased feelings of anxiety and depression. And what has happened, unfortunately, with social media is that many people have substituted their online relationships for their offline, in-person relationships. But there's another way in which technology is playing a role here, which is that all of us now walk around, or nearly all of us walk around with phones, with smartphones that give us immediate access to email, to text messaging. Now, that can be incredibly convenient. I have a smartphone and I use it, and it's very, very helpful. But that phone and our devices can also creep into other parts of our lives. Yeah. They can come to the dinner table with us and impact the quality of the conversations we have with our family. They can show up on the table at a restaurant when we're trying to catch up with a friend and instead end up being distracted by the messages that are popping up on our screen. So we have found that our phones and work more broadly has crept into our evenings, weekends, and vacation time. And that has actually taken away from our time with family and with close friends.